Welcome to episode 12 of Entrepreneur Life with me, Joel Campbell. And I am an entrepreneur. Complete shift in everything today for today's episode. Normally, as you know, it's recorded on a Friday evening. It's done in the office, which it still is today. And it's just me talking about the last week of work or the last 10 days, so on and so forth, talking about the trials and tribulations, the things that we've been through, the things we've experienced and how I've dealt with them. And they normally roll on one after the other as well, in terms of I'll talk about some things and the week after I'll talk about the resolutions, talk about problems, the resolutions, so on and so forth, and what that journey is taking. A little bit different today because this is episode 12. It is due to go out on Friday this week. Currently it is Wednesday. It is 8:45 in the morning. So it is actually an episode that's due to go out in 3 days, and I'm just recording it. Why? Well, it's not a long story. It's because last Friday, when I would normally record the episodes, firstly I'm normally 2 weeks in advance, but I had to re-record an episode because during the episode I was talking about certain things, and during the editing phase it became very apparent that we couldn't use that episode because I'd heavily breached a couple of NDA agreements, because I talk very openly and very honestly. Unfortunately, there is obviously a level or a cut-off in terms of what I can and can't say, and in that episode that I recorded, which was originally episode 11, I went beyond the line, and therefore it never made it to air, unfortunately. So that put us a week back, which was okay, we can manage that. And however, last Friday was my grandmother's funeral. So I went down to Somerset and spent the day obviously at the funeral and then with my family. And by the time I got back in the evening, I'd done 5 hours worth of driving. Obviously I had quite a long day. I just wasn't in the mood to record an episode. And then with the weather over the last few days, I just haven't got really sat down to do it for the various things. So I'm recording it now. It's Wednesday. Paul's going to edit it all together this afternoon. I'm going to get it out Friday, so it's going to be quite a quick turnaround. Thankfully, we've got a good team. Paul's great in terms of the editing studio, so he'll just get it done and off we go. Now, I've got a cup of tea, but it looks absolutely fucking rank. I might drink it, but it's basically very milky. It's very weak tea, it's very milky. I've just brewed a pot because I've just got into the office, and that's generally my morning routine when I come into the office. I get in, sometimes it might be 7:30, sometimes it's 8 o'clock, sometimes it might be 6:30, sometimes it might be 9 o'clock, just depending on what my day is doing. But what I always do is I'll make myself a pot of tea, I'll put it up at the table behind me, and then I'll have a couple of cups of tea throughout the morning. What's happened this morning, because I wanted to get this recorded, because I do need to get into my actual work day as well. I've got lots of meetings today. The tea's just not brewed properly, so it's a bit weak, and I've just poured in a little bit too much milk, and now I've got something that assembles or looks similar to what my wife would describe as washing up water. But yeah, fuck it, I'll drink it anyway. That's kind of why episode 12 is a little bit different, and I've just completely waffled around something I probably could have said in about 30 seconds. So if you haven't listened to me before, welcome. My name's Joel, and I like to waffle. Oh, fuck me, that's hot. Okay, right, so where should we start? Last week, it's always a bit difficult as well when I do an episode like this, because I've already got half of the current week that I would normally talk about coming forwards, which would be episode 13. So I've got to jump back 10 days to kind of remember what was actually going on. And I guess I'm going to pick up on 3 points in this episode, but 2 key ones. So the first one is going to be my resignation. That's a key point. The second one is going to be talking a little bit about my Gran, my family, and the funeral and everything I experienced there. And the third one is just going to be talking around the change of the divisional model and how that's developed and how that's looking, some of the ups, some of the downs, and some of the other things we're doing. So that's what I'm going to talk about. So let's start first of all with my resignation. Let's start right at the very top. So I, as a entrepreneur, any business owner, entrepreneur that started their own companies and built their own businesses will know you are a jack of all trades. They will know that you are a slave to all men, all women, all people. And basically what that means is you at some point will do pretty much every single job within that business, especially at startup point. So when you first begin, you're going to be doing the finances, you're going to be doing the sales, you're going to be doing the marketing, you're going to do, so produce the service or the product, or deliver the service or the product that your business delivers. You're also going to be HR, you're going to be the people that recruit, you're going to be people that interview, you're going to be the people that employ, the people that train, the people that mentor, the people that develop. You're the person that deals with the accountants, with the solicitors, with the banks, with HMRC, with Companies House. You're going to be the person that deals with insurance companies, all the health and safety, all the industry aspects, or all the aspects that your industry requires of you to deliver your product or service, depending on what the business is. It's a huge fucking mammoth task. And through all of that, the chances are you're not going to get paid. And you're probably going to be working somewhere in the region of about 80 hours a week. Now, I've met people that have worked similar to me, that have done like 100, 105 hour weeks. They are fucking monstrous. They are a slog. And again, I've spent time with people like me that have done that for 3-4 years. I've also spent time with entrepreneurs and business owners and spoken to entrepreneurs and business owners that actually only do 40-hour weeks or 50-hour weeks. So there is a variation. It really depends on what you're doing and how much you want to put into it, and what your goals and your whys are, and everything else that affects you in your life. When I first started this company, I was working full-time for somebody else, and that's how I was paying the bills. So I had a 37.5 hour, maybe a 40-hour contracted week that I had to work for them, and then I was building the business on the side, and I don't think I slept. So that's part of the growth, part of the pain. And as your business grows and develops, you start to put people into different places. So you might put somebody into sales, or you might put somebody into finance, or somebody into operations, whatever it might be, however your business grows. And over time, as the business grows, you put more people into place. And one of the things I've realized over the last number of months, how many months it is, 6 months or so, is that when you have somebody doing 2 roles in an organization, balls get dropped. As an entrepreneur, it's not so bad when you're starting a business, but as it develops, and then when you want to see big growth, like fast, strategic, growth, and you really want it to move forwards, you have to then start allocating individual people into individual roles, give them individual responsibilities, very specific roles or responsibilities, and let them drive that area. That will then catapult you forwards. It's a difficult combination to get right, because I know exactly what people will say, because I'm there, I'm doing it, I've done it, I've seen it, I'm going through the pain. But we can't put that person in place because we're not making enough money to put that person in place. And to make the money, we need to put that person in place. It's a proper catch-22. And that is absolutely true. And there is no easy way around that, unless you've got deep pockets or investors, or you've got a growth plan that you've been able to borrow money from. It is really difficult. If you're doing it, trading it off your own back, then yes, it's, excuse me. If you're trading it off your own back, then it is really hard and takes a long time. And this is why I guess some companies really go down an investment route, because what they want to do is scale fast. And to scale fast, you're going to need deep pockets. There's a number of other things you need as well, one of which is to actually get shit right, but you do need deep pockets. And it's one of the things that I'm going to enjoy about what we do centrally with the Campbell Group, in terms of supporting other businesses to grow like that, both financially and in terms of strategy. So anyway, that's the fundamentals of it. I'd found that I got myself to a position where I was holding multiple hats, as I've talked about on this podcast before. The CEO hat, divisional director hat, marketing manager hat for the attraction division, and a few other hats of bits that I do. And as I separated the companies into divisions, and we built the attraction division and formed that together, and that allowed me to put Lauren in place. I'll talk a little bit more about that division in coming up. That allowed me to put those guys into play. And it took me away from that day-to-day operations. For example, I've just walked in this morning, there's a big show going on today. I was actually first one in the building. That's a lie. Our sales director was the first lady in the building. I was second in the building, and everyone's asking if I can let them in. And my response is, I'm really sorry, I can't. I actually just work up in the offices, and there'll be somebody here from the operations teams for you shortly, who's gonna come and let you in, look after you, get you all set up and stuff like that. And sure enough, a few minutes later, somebody from ops turned up. It was nothing to do with me. I didn't get involved. I apologised, and I just left them to it. And that's how that should work, because it's got nothing to do with me. It's not my business to get involved in my business. I'm going to keep that quote. In fact, I'm going to say that again, just for Paul to pull that quote out. It is not my business to get involved in my business. Sounds crazy, I know, but that's part of the development and part of the growth. Is I want other people now to drive this company forwards. And there's a number of things that I'll talk about this in episode 13, where I'd identified the company. I knew the company was going backwards under my leadership. Under my management, I should say. The company was going backwards under my management. I didn't know where, but I knew it was. And since Lauren's taken over that management role and actually directing the division, we've identified a number of areas where that is true. That's episode 13. Anyway, digressing massively. So I got to a point where I'm still trying to be CEO, and part of my CEO role is to offer advice and guidance and support to Lauren and to her team, is to help with the events business and growing that, is to really spend time in 50mm media, to spend some time in some of the other investments I do, and really grow the brand and the overarching businesses and everything in between it, so to have much more touch points. And I reckon 80% of my time currently is swallowed up by being marketing manager of the attraction division. So that's a problem for me in terms of time, because I can't allocate all the time I need to it. Also, I'm not a marketing specialist. I'm not a marketing strategist. I can't even speak sometimes. That's not my bag. It's not my area. It's not my skill set. I understand it in as much as I understand sales, as much as I understand operations, as much as I understand health and safety and finance. Because as an entrepreneur, I've had to learn these things. But now we're at a point where we need somebody to really drive it forwards. And it's difficult, because do we have the budget for that additional salary? I mean, the question I always ask is, can we afford not to? Because we might not have the budget in the bank, but if we don't put that role in place, are we going to grow, or are we just going to continue to do what we're doing? And I believe we'll continue to do what we're doing. And I've seen that numerous times through this journey that I've been on. So I bit the bullet and I was like, we're going to have to put somebody in play. And the way I approached that was very official. Was I sent a resignation letter, or as an email in fairness, to Lauren, who's the divisional director. So technically she is the boss of the marketing manager, so technically my boss. It's a little bit weird. And also to Shelley, who's our employee engagement development director. And I basically said, hey guys, exactly what it was basically, hey guys, just to let you know, I'm resigning from my position as marketing manager. I will obviously continue to do the role until we find somebody new. I will obviously support and help the implementation of somebody new, the training of somebody new, getting them up to where we currently are. So handover's done, and then I'm out. And I sat with Lauren, and I spoke to Lauren about it, and she was like, yes, high five. She was actually really chuffed that I was leaving. Partly because it gets me out of the way, but also she recognizes, because she obviously looks at it from a very different perspective, but she's also had the benefit, I guess, of working with me for a number of years, and seeing how things can be done. She's been through the journey, and she recognises that we need somebody that really, really knows what they're doing. So she was very happy with that. Shelley wouldn't accept my resignation at first, but I told her that she had no choice because Lauren had already accepted it. So that was an interesting meeting. So yeah, it was a big thing, really. I mean, knowing when to step away from your business as the owner, founder, is really, really difficult. And people have been asking me about that over the last couple of weeks, because I posted on LinkedIn talking about how I was going to step away from the business or how I'd resigned. And I very much look at it in a similar way to your children. So if you've got kids, you'll appreciate this, but you get to a point, you look after your children, you nurture your children, you develop your children, you teach your children, you educate your children. It's the same with a business. That's exactly what you do with your business. You nurture your business, and different people come into your business, just different people come into your children's lives. At some point, you are going to have to let your child go off on their own, whether it's to school, whether it's to walk down to the shops, whether it's leaving home, whether it's going to university, whether it's moving out, whether it's their marriage, pregnancy, first relationship. At some point, you are going to have to let your child go off on its own, their own, I should say, Shows how I refer to my children. You're going to have to let them go off on their own and do their own thing and kind of learn their own mistakes. You try and guide them and support them as much as you can, and you've instilled the right behaviours and the right learnings into them at a young age, so they have a better chance of life. It's no different with the business. That's what you do with the business. You nurture it from its creation all the way through to a point where you can go, okay, I've instilled all these behaviors, I've instilled all these learnings, I've given you this framework, this vision, this understanding, this way of being. And now I'm going to step back because it's time for you to go and experience this on your own. And that's kind of how I see it. So yeah, it's challenging, but it's exciting, and it's the way that I believe we will grow. Otherwise, we will just continue doing what we're doing, and I will be sat here in 15, 20 years' time, still talking about the marketing campaigns I'm putting together for the jails. And that's not what I want to do. And my why has got really clear to me over the last week, which I'm going to talk about in episode 13, but what I'm going to talk about now is the reason why my why has changed. Well, it's not changed, why it's got more focused and why it's got stronger. I'm going to drink some of my shitty tea first. Oh, it is not the best cup of tea I've ever made, I'm going to be brutally honest. I don't think I can drink anymore. I think I'd be doing myself an injustice if I did. Oh my God. I'm a little bit snobby when it comes to tea. Okay, so I have, like I say, focused in a little bit more on my whys. I'm going to talk about in episode 13. This is about why I focused in on my whys. And it comes back down to my Gran passing away. So my Gran passed away a few weeks ago. She was 92. She'd had dementia for 4 years and been in a home. It'd been a very difficult time for the family, especially for her children, because they see her quite regularly. So my mum, my aunts, my uncles, and she just didn't know who she was, where she was, what was going on, who anybody was. So a very confusing and difficult time for everyone. So I think when she passed away, it was almost a bit of a little bit bittersweet. Obviously, everyone was sad, but at the same time, I guess there was an element of there's no more pain, for want of a better word, because it's very difficult with somebody with dementia when they don't know who they are or who you are or where they are or anything that's going on. That's very confusing and very scary, and that's not a really particularly nice way to live. And it's also very difficult for your family to see you deteriorate in that way and forget who everybody is and what's going on and who you are and everything you've done. And my Gran lived a fascinating life. She had run many businesses, different types of companies, some big, some small. She's had successes, she'd had failures. And my granddad died when I was 9. He was 62, died of lung cancer. From diagnosis to death was only a few months. It was very quick, it was very difficult. I can remember everyone was very upset. My gran was obviously in her early 60s at the time. And rather than kind of, I don't know, I guess rather than sort of, what my Gran did from that point, she was retiring or coming up to retiring, was she then just went off and did loads of really random experiences. So she went off and just went sailing all the time, and she went to trips to like Trinidad and Tobago and just like answered newspaper ads for crewmates wanted to go sailing for 6 weeks in Trinidad and Tobago. And she went and did it at the age of like 64, 65. She was off to the other side of the world, and she literally just said to her kids and to her grandkids, I'm off for a few weeks, I'm off to Trinidad and Tobago to go sailing, and I'll see you in a bit. And she was gone, and that was kind of it. And she did that for a few years, just going off and doing random different things. And she was part of a Channel 4 program at one point about how life begins at like 65, or it was a documentary all about people in their mid-60s going off and having completely crazy lives and stuff like that. She went gliding. She learned to glide, for Christ's sakes, at the age of 66, I think. She learned to glide in planes. which is a really random thing for somebody in their mid to late 60s to do. And then in her early 70s, she met a man called David, who was a fascinating guy who'd run his own companies as well, and had actually run very, very successful businesses, was incredibly knowledgeable. When I came back from Australia when I was 19, I lived with them for a month. They lived down in Cornwall near the beach, which was nice. So I went and lived with them for a month, and I spent basically 4 weeks surfing during the day and then hanging out with Mum and David. I call my grandmum, it's a long story. And I used to hang out with them, and David would talk to me about business, and he would help, I knew I wanted to run a company, and he would help just navigate me through some of the ups and the downs, some of the trials and tribulations. He would talk to me through his experiences, where he'd gone right, where he'd gone wrong, and we would just chat through those things. And Mum obviously had a background in that as well, so she would then apply her knowledge into that. And I got this really well-rounded approach, and it's one of the reasons why I called the company the Campbell Group, because I just felt a real strong connection to my Gran and to my granddad and to my step granddad, to my step granddad, and just then my mum and my aunt had run their own companies, and it was ingrained into us. It's ingrained into the Campbell family, as it is for lots of other families, to run your own businesses. And a lot of my family are self-employed, so they run companies or they're self-employed. And I just kind of felt that that's why I wanted the name of the Campbell. That's why I wanted the Campbell family name in the business. Anyway, going off it slightly, and I'll talk more about branding and companies, maybe episode 13, maybe episode 14, but going to then my Gran's funeral last week, something was I wasn't expecting to happen, which is my mum asked if I would write something and speak at the funeral, which is fine. I'm quite happy public speaking and talking and doing those kind of things, and normally I'll just do that off the cuff. I won't even consider it, like think too much about it beforehand, because I know my subject matter quite well. And with this also, I wanted to write it down. I wanted to make sure it was on the right amount of time, but I also wanted to make sure that I got it right. And I found it so hard to write down, really, really difficult to write it down. And then I got a really weird imposter syndrome piece, because what I hadn't realised initially was that what was happening was my Gran's generation, so one of her sisters was reading something. My uncle, so my mum's brother, sorry, which is my grandson. Oh, so confusing. My uncle was reading something, and then I was reading something. So you had 3 generations paying a tribute, and I was doing that not just for me, but also on behalf of my cousins. And it kind of got me thinking about, well, why is it that I deserve this accolade? Why am I the one that's deserving of speaking about my Gran and talking about those kind of things, and why not one of my cousins? And that gave me a little bit of an imposter syndrome for a moment, and I had to really kind of think that through. And when I actually went to do it, it was one of the hardest, but one of the most enjoyable talks I've ever had to give, or one of the speeches, whatever you want to call it, I've had to give. And I actually read it off the paper, because it was so emotional that I could feel the wobble in my voice as I was talking, and it was really difficult to get the words out clearly, because obviously it's a funeral. I love my Gran, as I do with the rest of my family. I haven't actually seen her for a few years. I went to see her about 3.5, 4 years ago in hospital, when she had a fall, and 3 years ago, and the dementia was kicking in by this point. And my aunt said to me before I went in, they said, just to warn you, she won't know who you are. The conversations are going to be quite difficult. She's in and out type of stuff in different conversations, so just to give you a heads up. So I was like, that's fine. And I walked in, and she recognised me, and I was there for about 35 minutes. And we had varying conversations about my childhood and about going sailing with her and my granddad. We spoke about my granddad, we spoke about business, we spoke about Bude. And I just had 35 minutes of pure clarity with my Gran. And my aunt said to me afterwards, they're like, wow, you got so fortunate, so lucky that you got a proper conversation out of her. She knew what was going on, she knew who you were, and everyone was really pleased by that. And it's one of the reasons why I didn't go to see her in the home afterwards, because I knew that she'd deteriorated to a point that she wouldn't know who I was. And my last actual proper sit down conversational memories with my Gran is just sitting down and having a conversation with my Gran, which I really hold quite dear. But so I did this talk, and then speech, and then I obviously went and spent some time with my family afterwards. And what that did was it really allowed me to reflect on what it is I'm trying to do in my life, with my life, for myself and for others. And that allowed me to just revisit my whys, analyze them again, and then just narrow the focus slightly more in terms of what it is that I want to do from this point forward. So yeah, that's going to be where I'm going to talk about in episode 13. There's a few other bits that have happened this week that I'll pick up in episode 13. I thought I'd share that with you because all of this was going on. As I said, my Gran died a few weeks ago. I didn't tell anybody at work when she passed away. I just cracked on and did it, and not because I'm an emotionless robot or anything like that. It's because I have to be stronger than everyone else in our organisation to help build and develop it. And at the time, my teams didn't need to know that I was going through something. What they needed my support, they needed my strength, they needed my vision, they needed my direction. That's what the business needed at the time. Had it happened today, I might tell them in a slightly different way. And I go through that, and I spoke to one of our suppliers the other day, and we were having there was a bit of a challenge going on one of our old suppliers, and that's why there was a challenge going on. And I was chatting to somebody in the team, and it's quite difficult for the owner at the moment because his granddad died, and he's going through something. And I thought, okay, cool, do you know what? I get that, I understand that. I was like, and my Gran died, and I'm still going to get this shit done because that's what my team need from me. That's what they expect. It's sad and it's difficult, and please try not to take this the wrong way. It is really sad when you lose somebody like that, and it's really hard. It wasn't a shocked loss, and my Gran had a fantastic life, and she was well into her 90s, and she had a wonderful life, like I say. So it's more of a celebration than a sadness. But life goes on for everyone else around it. And for those not connected to my Gran, life definitely goes on. And it's really hard as a business owner, because one of the things that happens is I can't, at the moment, I'm still too involved in what goes on. I can't stop, because if I do, the business stops. If the business stops, people stop, and people don't get paid, and then there's a whole knock-on effect. So there is an importance in terms of being able to carry on. Equally, there's an importance of being able to take some time to really deal with what's happening in your life and make sure that physically, mentally, health-wise, you're okay. And that's very much what I did last week after the funeral. I went home and I really made sure that I dealt with some of my, not my demons, but I really made sure that I kind of looked at it properly, and I spent time doing it, which is why I didn't record the episode. Anyway, that is me done. I'm going to go and do my day at work. Paul can edit this later, hopefully, and we'll get it out on Friday. So thank you once again for listening. Please do subscribe. Do tell others if you found it interesting. If you think it's shit, then hey, why don't you tell people I listened to this podcast today? I thought it was shit. You should check it out. So thank you very much. This has been episode 12 of Entrepreneur Life with me, Joel Campbell, and I am an entrepreneur.